Now for the next keynote, I'm very glad to invite to the stage Mr. Peter Rabley, CEO of Open Geospatial Consortium. So as you may be aware, the Open Geospatial Consortium, or OGC in short, is an international voluntary standards organization that develops and maintains international standards for geospatial technologies. His talk is titled, AI, Will It Eat Geospatial? Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the sponsors, organizers, co-organizers, partners, and especially Dr. Indra Gopal for inviting me here and allowing me to talk to you all on this afternoon here in Bangalore. So, OGC is a 31-year-old global nonprofit, and we were formed 31 years ago because software vendors at the time were using proprietary data formats to lock in their users. And there was great frustration, particularly with American governments, that they couldn't make more use of their data. And so they helped form OGC. And our task was to solve the interoperability problem. Not solve the tool software problem, but how do I make my data more accessible? And at first, there is no shame in telling you that vendors did not like OGC. They saw it as competition. But gradually over time, vendors understood that there was actual great commercial value in supporting open standards, not just from an intellectual perspective, but also from a positioning perspective and from a software development perspective as well. We've now grown into a membership organization that is global, of almost 500 members, all of whom are organizations. A third of our members are government, a third are commercial companies, and a third are academics, universities. Most of our university engagement is from Europe and from the US. And we, besides develop standards, we also do things called testbeds and pilots and code sprints. And typically these are funded by either government organizations like NASA or NOAA, who want to see whether or not a new standard is truly going to work in the wild, in the real world. And so they will provide funding to us, most of which we then provide to our members to be able to perform research and see if these standards will work, or the research related to it. So OGC now, as we look at the next 30 years, we have a vision to become the global geospatial technical community. Independent, trusted, non-profit, and driven by these very important factors. I won't go through all of them, I'm a little time limited, and you heard some of them earlier, but these are core to what we do. We have to earn trust and we have to maintain trust among all of our members. And to do that, we have developed and thought very carefully about how we give ourselves legitimacy through accountability, transparency, and our ability to allow our members to have a say in how we operate. So our governance documents, which have been honed over 30 years, have just been reviewed and are about to get modernized and updated with an eye to making sure that we are still legitimate and we can still drive trust as we work together to create standards. Collaboration is really important. You may have heard this term pre-competition. If you think about it, we have at least nine companies mapping the world. This is a market failure. Why are 9 companies spending so much money to redundantly map the same things? Well, it's because they can't rely on each other. The infrastructure is too valuable. Location is at the heart of all the platforms. And Google is not going to license mapping infrastructure from Microsoft simply because they can change the terms of the licensing and the pricing in a second. which would destroy their business. So they have no choice but to redundantly map the world's surface and what's on there. We like to create a pre-competitive space. We believe there's a need for infrastructure and engagement that makes no sense to build on your own, but that everybody needs for whatever purpose. And if you can create an environment where everyone comes together and works collaboratively on that pre-competitive good, then this will help everyone, whether it's research, government, public service delivery, or even commercial. And that's proven to be the case over the last 30 years. That's a shared interest. I always tell anyone, I've had two successful software companies in the past, and finding shared interest, even with competitors, was key to being successful in both of my companies. Learning and knowledge, we're constantly adding to our library of learning and knowledge. We currently have over 75 domain working groups globally working on different problems, to undersea mapping, to the problem of how you join undersea mapping with land mapping, to the new Gaussian splatting 3D performance standard with Kronos Group, with GLTF. So we're constantly learning and we're constantly problem solving. New directions, as you'll see, I will hope to answer the question, will AI eat geospatial? And we're moving much more towards shared ontologies, semantics, models, as you'll see in a sec, knowledge graphs, etc., with a goal to helping to solve integrity, provenance, and trust. This has become a hot topic for us, particularly driven by the US military. And integrity, provenance, and trust simply means, how do I know the data you sent me is what you said it is? How do I know it's not changed in transmission? How do I know it was you that sent it to me? And how can I trust you and the data that you've sent me? It's a very difficult problem. One only has to look at what's happening in the Ukraine war to understand how spoofing of GPS signals and others are so easily accomplished, to understand why IPT might be very important. And of course, security and privacy. I would suggest current AI models are impossible to have security for, by the very nature of how they work. And so member values, and we have some of you here in the crowd are members, and thank you for being members. And those that aren't, we hope that you would join us in this collaborative space. But one of the key things to what we do is our intellectual property regime. I heard it mentioned earlier. Everyone who comes and works on a standard, regardless of whether they're Microsoft, Amazon, Airbus, they're all members. They agree that all intellectual property they contribute, they give the right to the OGC to have, in order that we can create a single copyright license that is highly permissive for all use, including commercial exploitation. And this is a very powerful and important component of how we work. If we didn't have this, we would not be able to allow commercial companies in particular to invest in the standard. If you restrict their ability to leverage it, they certainly won't show up in force. And because of it, they do. Pleased to announce, this is our new community engagement platform. We're seeing our numbers and engagement rise very rapidly. We've just done a soft launch of this. It's an app on Google and both Apple as well. It's open to all members. This is where we have our working groups. This is where we do our standard discussions. This is where we do our research. It's much more, let's say the one it replaced, this is much more accommodating, and many of you in the room would be more used to this type of app. We're opening up an individual membership and a developer membership, which is discounted for different geographies. This is significantly reduced. This allows developers in India, for example, to be involved and work with their counterparts in Europe and the US. We're excited to launch this. And now with our university membership, students have access while they're students at the university, as long as the university is a member. And for a year afterwards, they continue to have membership in OGC. So, AI, is it going to eat geospatial? Well, I thought I'd throw out a couple of slides. Doing some analysis, very few people are making any money on AI. It's the consultancies at the moment. They're riding the wave of hype. And some other smaller companies, funnily enough, most of them on the list here didn't raise. And they're doing reasonably well. Databricks, that was a quote from a couple of months ago. The bubble will burst. This one I found very interesting. This is tracking earnings, and this is mapping AI versus the dot-com era. And as you can see, it's tracking quite nicely. And we all know what happened with the dot-com era. So this is some prep, massive overinvestment, and inability to recover revenue. The revenue possibility is probably too small and too far out to recover the massive investments that is happening. So the other problem, it's highly concentrated. It's 5 or 6 companies with most of the value capture at the moment. Anyone familiar with Ehram's law? It's the opposite of Moore's law. And it says as things advance quickly and become more complex, they drag and slow things down, and you get incremental improvements. And the argument is text-based LLMs are really at that point now. Ehram's law is kicking in hard. Also, we forget that adoption can't be forced. There is a drag, if you will, of socio-cultural, economic reasons that drags adoption. The US Census Bureau just reported that enterprise adoption of AI has fallen from 14% to 12% and is likely to continue to decline. And of course, environmental and conservation constraints. The impact on the environment of the data centers is significant. So we're arguing, yes, this is going to be an industrial bust. This is going to be similar to the railroads in the 1800s, where the initial investors in railroads never recovered their money because the real value capture for railroads came much later. And in the dot-com era, certainly in the US, the benefit was the build-out of the cable and connectivity that was left behind. And we think the bubble will probably burst. If you want a date, I would say Q2 next year. But it will leave behind significant infrastructure that will be available for new innovation, startups, and research at a cost otherwise we wouldn't have seen had that investment not happened. So we think it's a bust, and we think it's going to be a good bust in some ways. All right. And the current fundamentals are stronger than the dot-com. There are real companies out there who will make money from this positioning. Okay. Yann LeCun. How many know Yann LeCun? Good. Well, okay. The winner pool. That's good. Some consider him the father of convoluted neural networks in the 80s. Anyway, this is important, right? His argument is that we've known about deep learning for some time. It's only with new architecture, data, and compute we've been able to do the clever things that we've been doing. I really like his saying at the top. And the other day in Delhi, I witnessed a dog go across about 8 lanes of traffic. And I realized how he's right. Look at how intelligent that dog was. But actually, seriously, what he's saying is current text-based LLMs don't have a fundamental grounding of the physical world, persistent memory. These things are being worked on, but right now this is why he's less interested in the text-based LLMs and thinks we won't get to Gen I through text-based LLMs. And where they're moving is what he calls JIPA, which is understanding the physical world like a dog understands the physical world. The dog can feel the temperature of the road. It can hear and see things, motion. It's making adjustments, really quite complicated in real time, about is he going to get hit by that truck or not? Can he cool off in the pond? Is he going to bite someone's ankle? These are all happening extremely quickly and are computing at far higher capacity than a text-based LLM might be. So with that in mind, if you do research, you'll see that quietly Meta, in particular where Jan is, are investing heavily in what's called world models. And as someone who is around geospatial, I'm excited. I think this is the best time to be in geospatial, because finally the world is coming to geography and understanding that the ultimate context and complexity lives in geography, it lives in physical space. And if we're going to extract true value with AI, it will be in and around understanding the physical world. So will it eat geospatial? Yes. But, you know, if you look at MIT from the 80s, the Compute Science Lab, there was a big challenge about object avoidance, right? And from all the hackathons and research of object avoidance by robots came the Roomba vacuum, if you're familiar with it, which is a very clever form of spatial AI, right? How it thinks and how it adapts. So we've had it for some time. And then we had computer vision. This is another research paper from the same lab in the 80s. And computer vision was about detecting objects in imagery. And this was quickly picked up by DARPA and the military, who wanted to process enormous amounts of satellite imagery and other forms of imagery to detect things like tanks and troop movement, because you couldn't put enough human eyeballs. And so starting in the early 90s, we've had machine learning for object and detection. And so in some ways, as geospatial people, we say, welcome, AI people. We've been doing it for some time. And now, unfortunately, in the geospatial industry, this is what AI is being positioned as and being said is what we're solving for. On the left is a typical aerial photography of Spain. In the old days, they would put 2007, they'd put 20 people, digitize the buildings because they wanted to know about the buildings, and it would take a year and cost about €1 million. Now they have a machine learning algorithm for building detection. It's one person, 3 days, and the accuracy, Gabrielle just told me, is about plus or minus 2% of what the old-fashioned way did. Extremely helpful, but this is not what we think geospatial will become with AI. And it's already being positioned. This is a company in Europe that's positioning itself as the new AI platform. If you think about it, much of the software that we use now, if you use ArcGIS or use QGIS, if you're familiar with these products, they have these incredibly powerful interfaces that you as the human have to understand what the workflow is that I'm going to do. I'm going to click on this, load this data, perform this function, get the result, verify the result, and do something else. Those days are going. That's all going to be replaced, we think, by a natural language interface that simply asks a question and a series of agents are going to kick off because they understand models, semantics, ontology, and very specific world models. And they know what functions and performance that they need to do. And that's all hidden to the user. And the result comes back. So the very nature of the way the human will interact with geospatial software is going to completely change, and we think radically. I don't have time, I'm already a bit late, but this is how we're thinking about our standards process. And I'm happy to share this presentation with anyone that would like it. On the left is how we currently do our standards, and on the right is where we are moving. The next slide we like to call our rock and pebbles. I'll be honest, this is my chief technology officer. He's based in Frankfurt, he's German, and he thought this was a very funny and appropriate analogy. As an Englishman, I fail to see the humor in it, but I trust his technical prowess as our CTO. So his feeling is very simply that modern current LLMs are monolithic, huge black boxes that process things and give us results and answers. And we've all had funny results, so we know that hallucinations do take place. He's saying we're going to see a breakout of these types of elements, And as a result of breaking these elements, we're going to see specialized AI and ML. You will see, for example, a world model for a building and wiring that occurs in a building, which has expert knowledge contained inside knowledge graphs, the nodes and edges and the vertices, and can be understood by another model because it has enough intelligence and knowledge in it that it can make decisions with the combination of these smaller, highly specialized world models. Palantir says they've been doing this for the last 20 years. I have no reason to doubt them, but they've been putting the labor in to training models, if you will, not in the way that you think I'm correcting your English feedback loop to the AI, but really transferring and training expert knowledge based on your use case into the world models and the models. This is a big shift for us. And what we think is the technology is good, but just like our designers who set us up 30 years ago understood, if you don't establish principles for how you're going to conduct your collaborative environment up front, you'll be in trouble. So we think that values and ethics have got to be operationalized from the beginning. IPT has to be solved. And with IPT will probably come something called proof certificates, which is how sure can you be that the result of your model can be relied on? And depending on what it is I'd like to rely on, is it automated driving? And so is it safety of life? So is 98% acceptable, and will insurance underwrite 98%? We have to see. Security, privacy, and accuracy. We know that Google's working on 2 LLMs that, if you will, compete against each other, test each other to try and give some security framework. But it's not ideal, and much work has to be done before we have any idea that we can make secure LLMs a thing. We think it has to be checked by humans at some point in the process. There has to be verifiable proof, certainly for the next 5 to 10 years. Use open models and protocols. We'll see if Anthropic does what they say. They did just pay a $2 billion plus fine for copyright infringement. So we'll see. Maybe they said that after the payment was due. We'll wait and see. But it's going to be very hard to justify a proof certificate for a black box. Perhaps you can. I don't know. Maybe for specific applications. But we'll see. And as open standards people in the OGC, we think that's critical. And of course, if we can, we should minimize the environmental impact. And that's it. Thank you all very, very much.
Sorry, I ran a bit late. That's perfect. Thanks, Peter. And so as you know, at CDPG, we are building the integrated geospatial data sharing interface. We are committed to implement the latest OGC standards, and the goal is to create a world-class platform. We are committed to that, and thanks for your time. I know you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I'll also invite my colleague Deepti to hand over a token of appreciation.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.